From the studio that was this fucking close to giving us Aunt May the movie comes Venom, directed by Ruben Fleischer, a guy with only one crowd-pleasing movie under his belt, produced by Avi Arad, the man that forcibly shoehorned Venom into Spider-Man 3, and Amy Pascal, the completely mature woman who threw a sandwich at Kevin Feige when he was like, "Hey, you morons don't know what you're doing with Spider-Man, let us have him." And now we have this movie. Anyway, Tom Hardy plays Eddie Brock, an investigative reporter who is investigating evil corporate business guy number 1,000,007, played by Riz Ahmed, and one way or another he comes into contact with a symbiote, and then Venom happens. Yay! Solo Venom movie! Okay, I'm gonna be completely honest with you, I was not looking forward to this movie at all. There was just nothing about this movie that screamed potential or true promise from the very beginning, because let's face it, Sony has no clue what they're doing with the Spider-Man franchise, and did you mind? I'm trying to complain here, sir. I mean, they screwed up the original trilogy with Sam Raimi's movies, they totally screwed up the Amazing Spider-Man films 2 movies in, they were trying to do all this ridiculous crap, and then Marvel came along and was like, "Hey, you guys can't have complete custody anymore, we're gonna take him and put him in our movies, and you guys can take some of the credit, okay? Okay." But I could safely say, after going to see the movie a couple nights ago, that the movie met and potentially exceeded my expectations. But mostly because I expected the movie to suck. And it sucked, alright! There is pretty much nothing about this movie that works, like, at all, except for one thing. The one positive about this movie is Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock. I liked him in the role, I thought he had some good charisma to him, and I liked seeing him interact with these different characters, and the rapport between him and Venom was actually kind of entertaining. He had good chemistry with basically himself. I actually enjoyed the Eddie Brock / Venom dynamic when they're interacting with each other, even though there's one scene where Venom basically makes out with him. I wish I was joking about that, but I'm not. Venom himself looks pretty cool, I guess. Of course, he's missing the big white spider on his chest because this is a movie about a popular Spider-Man villain that's not actually connected to Spider-Man. Because the last time somebody tried to make a movie about a popular villain that's not connected to the popular hero, it worked perfectly. Shh. So I did like Tom Hardy as Eddie / Venom. I'm totally down to see him in more movies. Just as long as, he's in a good movie next time. So now that we got that out of the way, let's get into the negatives. Everything else. Michelle Williams is just cliche ex-girlfriend character number 4005. Riz Ahmed is just generic, uninspired, not scary, evil Elon Musk dude number 6005. I don't give a crap about either of these characters. You've seen their exact performances in other movies, not from those actors, but from just other types of characters like this, so they're just not interesting in the slightest. That's pretty much how every other character works, aside from Tom Hardy. Nobody else is interesting. You don't give a shit about anybody else except for Tom Hardy. The movie tries to justify Riz Ahmed's motivations, giving him the whole, "Oh, the planet is dying, we gotta come up with new things!" Which it doesn't work at all. It just makes him and the movie as a whole look just completely pretentious. There's this other symbiote in the movie called Riot. I guess he's kind of like the big bad guy of the whole movie. But we don't hear pretty much anything about him until the final battle. For the beginning of the movie, you just see him taking the form of other different people until he makes his way to Riz Ahmed, which then he takes his final form with Riot, then we see him fully realized. But we hear absolutely nothing about this character until Venom has to go fight him. It's just the most underdeveloped villain in a comic book movie I've seen in quite a while. I mean, at least Steppenwolf in Justice League, at least we got to know things about him in the beginning of the movie, so at least we have some better idea of what he wants to do and what his plans are. Not saying Steppenwolf is a good villain, but at least they actually kinda tried with him, but not so much here with Riot. So speaking of symbiotes, this movie can't even bother to follow its own rules. So basically, the symbiote and the host, they have to be perfect matches for one another, or the host is going to die. So there's a scene where Eddie and Venom separate, so Venom wants to get back together with Eddie, so he's taking the form of other different hosts to get to him, but why can he just suddenly take the form of these other people without any consequences? I mean, he takes the form of a dog, and even Michelle Williams, and nothing bad happens, even though earlier in the movie we saw what happens when a non-match and a symbiote come together. The host is gonna die within like a minute. So did Venom just get super lucky with the dog and the Michelle Williams, or did this movie get lazy? The world may never know. The action scenes are so poorly shot and edited, you can't even make out what's going on the majority of the time, and everything you can make out is just uninspired, generic action poop. This movie also has some major pacing problems to it. The whole movie just feels very rushed. I mean, from the beginning of the movie, there's this opening sequence where the spaceship crashes to Earth and one of the symbiotes takes the form of a person and gets loose, and it goes by that quickly that you have no time to process what just happened, and that was definitely not intentional either. It was clearly shot and originally edited like a regular paced scene, but then it's like, oh, quick, over, cut to the title. Nothing about this movie flows correctly, especially Eddie and Venom's relationship. In the scene where Eddie and Venom separate, Eddie's like, you know what, I'm done with you, I don't want to see you again, leave me alone. But then, 2 short scenes later, they're back together, and Tom Hardy's like, hey, I'm just kidding, you're my best friend. Eddie and Venom becoming friends just does not flow naturally, and it's just way too rushed like everything else in the movie, and it's really something that could have been easily resolved if number 1, the bulk of the movie didn't take place in one night, and number 2, if supposedly 40 minutes of the movie was not cut. Chances are, at least some of that 40 minutes was essential information to make the movie flow properly, which it does not. You know, Spider-Man 3 suffered from having too many villains and too many storylines going at the same time, trying to do way too much in one movie, and ultimately a lot of that fell short. But Venom just completely fails to tell one simple story. You know, with all of that being said, I can see why maybe a certain group of people might really like this movie. Maybe they're just not concerned about having a deep, interesting story or proper pacing or anything like that. They just want to see Eddie and Venom and some explosions. So, okay, cool. If that's all you want, then you'll probably like Venom. There's probably going to be a nice group of people out there that are going to be big fans of this movie, and they're looking forward to seeing more Venom movies like this. And, you know, honestly, this movie's bad, but it's by far not the absolute worst comic book movie ever. I've seen far worse. I would say that it's better than Catwoman and Fan4stick, but it's really still in that section of comic book movies where they just were not trying hard enough. It doesn't live up to the standards that we expect nowadays. And like I said, Tom Hardy, I really liked him in the role. I am totally down to see more of him, but I really want to see a better movie. You know, I want to see him team up with Spider-Man, you know, and hopefully someday we'll get that. So I'm totally down to see more Venom. Just, if they're gonna go ahead with Venom 2, at least try. You know, this movie's probably not gonna do as big a numbers as Sony wants it to, but it's probably still gonna make enough to warrant a sequel, which means Sony's just gonna be swimming in pennies and be like, yay! Now we're gonna move ahead with our Sony universe of Marvel characters. Morbius the Living Vampire, coming July 2020! Yay! So all in all, Venom is a movie that fails in pretty much every department except for the main character, and you know what, if you like this movie despite all these, then that's no big deal. You know, you do you. I'm not gonna stop you from trying to like this movie. Everyone's entitled to their own opinions, and like I said, this is not the worst comic book movie ever. It's at least a somewhat kind of competent movie, and you know what, I could see myself coming back to this in a few months, you know, just like, you know, on a Friday night, pop in Venom, order some pizza, and, you know, laugh at a bad movie, because sometimes you gotta do that. Sometimes you gotta watch a bad movie to appreciate good ones. That's why I own Fan 4 Stick on Blu-ray. Yeah. So, those are my thoughts on Venom. If you guys have seen the movie, or if you just can't wait to see movies of Morbius the Living Vampire, Kraven the Hunter, Black Cat, Green Goblin, Sandman, and how many other Spider-Man villains Sony can make movies about, let me know this down below, and we'll see you on the Brockopp side.